Today I'm going to show you how I add color to Scratchboard. We are going to be taking this calico cat from this, to this, and then to this. I decided to add in my process of the black wash first, as it is all a part of enhancing the overall black coloring on the cat, and I do it on nearly all of my pieces. But if you are just interested in seeing the color section, you can jump straight to that, timestamp below. For the black wash, I'm using Ampersand's Black India Repair Ink. I'm going to give it a good shake and add a few drops to my palette. Now a little goes a long way, so you don't need to add too much to start. Then I'm going to add a few drops of water to dilute it and give it a good mix. You'll see that I dab it on a paper towel, and that's for me to see how opaque it is and make sure that there isn't too much water. And then I dive straight in, going over all the black sections. It looks darker when it's still wet, but it will dry lighter. For the paintbrush, I'm using a Black Velvet Silver size 4 brush, but you can use any that work for watercolor or inks. The black wash really allows us to keep texture while enhancing the darkest areas, because even with our smallest tools and lightest marks, they will often still have quite a bit of white that is too light for my taste, so this will really help give it depth. So this is our first round of the black wash, but you'll see soon that I'll be adding scratches back in to build up some layers to really enhance the depth. Now I'm going back in with my tattoo needle to add in some more texture. I will say that adding in black washes and also color just takes a lot of practice to get used to how much you want to build up the layers and how much you want to dilute the ink, how opaque you want it to look. It also kind of just boils down to personal preference. For me, I really like the look of building up additional layers after the first round of the black wash. I am now starting the second round of the black wash. Now I will focus on the areas that have more shading and that are the darkest, and then that will wrap up the black wash. Now diving into color. I primarily use Ampersand Scratchboard inks that are by far the best to work with on Scratchboard, of course because they are made specifically for it. In the past I've also used watercolor and Dr. P.H. Martin's India inks, but with watercolor the colors are not as opaque, so it takes quite a bit more layering, and for the India inks I have found them a little bit sticky to work with. The only downside to Ampersand Scratchboard inks is that there are only 6 colors in the pack, but that also forces you to learn color theory in learning to mix. So you'll see with all the colors I use, I give a good shake and add a few drops to my palette, and then I dilute the colors with a few drops of water. Now I'm starting to mix the two to get a more light yellowish green. I do want to mention that I am still pretty new to color theory, and I'll be honest, I'm definitely learning as I go with mixing colors at this stage of my career, as I have primarily worked with black and white the last 8 years. So don't judge me on my color mixing skills. My goal for this video is to show you how to get the color onto the Scratchboard, and I hope that part is helpful for you. As I get started with the eyes, I want to mention one important factor with adding color to Scratchboard. If you watched my introduction to Scratchboard video, you may remember that I mentioned that before adding color, you need to scratch off more of the Black India ink on the board first. That way the color doesn't mix with and muddy up with the black ink. So have that in mind before you start, and maybe work with some tester boards to see what a good balance is for whatever medium you are using to add the color. I have found that with inks, they don't muddy up as much as with watercolor, and I think that's because they are more opaque, and of course, ampersand inks are made specifically to go on Scratchboard, but it really will depend on what brands you're using. Now you can dilute the ink as much as you want if you don't want it to be as opaque or saturated right off the bat. I personally love strong saturated and vibrant colors in my work, so you'll see me leaning more towards that for most of the pieces which I add color to. You'll also see me continuously dab my paintbrush onto a paper towel, and that's for me to check the color and also take off excess water so the board doesn't get really wet when I place the brush down on it. I now have a good orange that I'm happy to start with, but I will adjust the color more as I add in layers, which you'll see later. I decided to go ahead and do a second layer of color before moving on. I'm now going to the other orange areas of the body before we do the nose, and then we'll get to our second layer of etching. Now moving on to the nose, I'm going to mix a very diluted and light pink. So I'll be mixing the pink with some brown and some yellow to get a nice pink that matches my reference photo since this is a commission. Just based on my reference photo, I decided that this was actually a little bit too dark of a first layer for the nose, so I dabbed a little bit of it off, and I'll add more layers again in a little bit. And we are now going to dive into the second layer of etching. For the eyes, I usually try my microblading tattoo needle first to lighten the layer of color up, but if you find it's a bit sticky, you can definitely switch to a regular tattoo needle or X-Acto knife. So again, I'm going to be building up multiple layers so that way my piece doesn't look as flat. But as mentioned during the black wash section, it really boils down to personal preference for how many layers you want to build up. You may think it looks great after one layer of color, but I would challenge you to add back in some texture and see how it looks when you continue to build it up. And if something looks too flat, you can always use the black India ink to add some more shading back in. There's a little bit of darker shading around the pupil on this cat, so I just made my yellow and green color a little bit darker, and I'm adding that in now. And now I'm going to etch in another layer of fur on all the orange areas. I'm going in with my second layer of color on the nose, and this cat also has some very, very light pink around the mouth as well. And now another layer of the orange. I am now going to do another layer of etching with my microblading tattoo needle on the eyes and all of the colored fur. And now my next layer of color. At this point, I'm finally happy with where my color is at. Even though this video is around 15 minutes long, this whole coloring process took me about an hour and a half. So now comes my favorite part, which is adding in all the final textures of fur and details. In the last few minutes, you will see me switch between my X-Acto knife, tattoo needles, scratch nib, and fiberglass brush. I'll add in all the whiskers and all the little hairs around the body and on the ears. And one thing that is not in this video is I actually went back in to add more shading between the two legs lower on her chest and went back over the sections of white fur to blend them in a bit more. Sometimes you don't realize you need to do a little bit more work until you step away for a day or two and then come back to it. If I can leave you with any final words of encouragement for continuing to learn Scratchboard, it would be to be patient. Adding color to Scratchboard is not easy. It takes a lot of trial and error, and you'll only get better if you practice and experiment. But I hope this video was helpful for you, and if you liked it, I would be so appreciative if you wanted to leave a like and a comment. And if you are keen to keep learning Scratchboard, I will be releasing a few more animal tutorials very soon, so be sure to subscribe. And if you are interested in purchasing my Scratchboard Starter Kit, which has everything you need to start learning Scratchboard, I will link that below.